You're listening to the Potaholics Comedy Network. Potaholics.com.
Welcome to Codex, a history of video games. This week we talk about Sonic the Hedgehog, we talk about the launch of the Super Nintendo, and the opening salvos of the Great Console War. Welcome to Codex, a history of video games. My name is Tyler Osby.
And I'm Mike Coletta.
And today we are discussing Chapter 23 of The Ultimate History of Video Games by Stephen L. Kent. This chapter is called Run for the Money.
We're going to call it The Road to War.
Yes.
Because we're leading up to console wars. So the first thing we want to talk about is the NES at its peak is still doing really well. In 1989, like the lifespan end.
Mm-hmm. That's a few years after it came out.
Yeah, like it's been a while. Well, I think the Famicom originally was 1983. So this has been going on for 6 years.
That's a pretty long life for a console.
Yeah, and so it's beaten out the TurboGrafx and the Genesis easily. And the main reason because of that was Super Mario 3 came out in 1989. And that sold 17 million copies.
Wow.
And currently holds... at the time, held the record for most cartridges sold not included with a console.
Right. Well, that would make sense because if you include a game with your console, of course it's going to sell as many as the console.
Exactly.
You have 100% market penetration.
And that's why Tetris and Super Mario Brothers hold that title with about 30 million apiece. Tetris for Game Boy, Super Mario Brothers for NES.
Yeah.
Even like third-party licensed games were doing really well. Like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was crushing it. Batman was crushing it.
Batman, like the movie tie-in?
Yeah. With Tim Burton.
Yeah.
Doing real well.
Michael Keaton was in that game.
That's right. Michael Keaton starred
in that game.
Imagine if they came out with a Birdman NES game. Okay, all in all, Nintendo made about $3.34 billion in earnings and sold around 48 million NES systems worldwide.
Holy moly.
Yeah, pretty nuts.
That record wouldn't be topped for a while, I think, until the PlayStation 2.
Yeah, it's a lot. Also, there's another fact that comes up in this thing later that really blew my mind, and I just didn't know the timing, I guess. But okay, I'm going to get to that later. I'm getting distracted when you said PlayStation 2. Distracted me. Sega decided it's time for a change. Now, if you recall, in last episode, we talked about the rise of Michael Katz to becoming the CEO of Sega of America.
Uh-huh.
Well, he wasn't there very long. He was there a year before he was replaced. Yeah, and he was replaced with a man named Tom Kalinske. Now, Tom Kalinske... very handsome, tall fella. Okay, people said he was a handsome, standard businessman is how he was described in the book. He was graduated from the University of Wisconsin with a marketing degree and spent some time in advertising before joining Mattel Toys.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So making Barbies and stuff
actually,
like that.
that's exactly right. He was the one that he moved up really quickly, and he came up with the idea of diversifying Barbie themes.
Oh.
So he came up with Malibu Barbie.
Wow.
Yeah, so thank you.
He's the guy.
If you think about Malibu Barbie a lot, and I'm super glad it exists in the world, you should thank Tom Kalinske. He was a big part of it.
I think about Malibu Barbie all the time.
Yeah, he was a big part of it. In fact, when he started at Barbie, they usually made about $42 million of business worldwide a year. When he left, it was $550 million a year.
Oh, he 10x'd it. He increased it by an order of magnitude.
Yeah. Oh, good use of an order of magnitude. Nice. That's excellent. Yeah. So Tom Kalinske, pretty solid business guy. Okay.
Knows what's up.
Yeah. He also oversaw the research and development that formed Mattel Electronics, if you recall, with those football games, those handheld games. Mm-hmm. He was on the board when Mattel lost everything, though, with the Intellivision. He was there for the crash. He was a board member, and he watched Mattel lose $350 million.
Whoa.
Yeah, he was there for that. A sad day to be working at Mattel.
Yep.
Or any video game company, for that matter, I would think.
Yeah, that was during the crash, so...
Big crash, yeah.
Just a sad day for video games in general.
Not the coin-op crash, though.
No.
Home console crash. He was president of Mattel for 3 years. And while in that position, he spent most of his time dealing with advertising. The big problem they had as a toy company is they didn't get really great advertising spots on TV. So they had to battle, like McDonald's, I think it mentions in the book, being like the best one. They had like the really good advertising spots. So his idea was Mattel would create their own TV show on cable television, which is already cheaper. And that cable television show, that cartoon they created, they could sell toys for that cartoon and their other products for really cheap advertising slots if they're the producer. That cartoon was called He-Man and the Masters of the Universe.
Oh, yeah.
So Mattel and partially Tom Kalinske helped create He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. So this made them get those cheap advertising slots, and
The whole show was an advertisement for He-Man.
the whole
toys.
show was based on this toy that they
Yeah.
they just made up a toy, gave him a backstory, made a cartoon for him.
There's a lot of toys like that in the 80s. Like Transformers is that way.
Yeah.
Pretty much all those cartoons that you loved in the 80s were really just created to sell you
Would
toys.
you say those Transformers cartoons are more than meets the eye?
I would indeed, yes.
Very good. Kalinske, after 16 years with Mattel, then went on to work at Matchbox Cars for a very short amount of time.
I thought you were going to say Matchbox 20, and I was like,
He went
whoa,
on to be the lead singer of Matchbox 20 for a very short amount of time
Whoa.
before Rob Thomas took over.
really diverse.
But they were thinking about using him in that hit Santana song "Smooth," though. For a bit, they were thinking about using Tom Kalinske, and then they moved back to Rob Thomas. So for 16 years, he was with Mattel. Then he went to Matchbox Cars, and he was only there for a very. They don't say in the book, but my guess is it sounds like it was like under a year before he was hired by Hayao Nakayama, the CEO of Sega Enterprises, to replace Michael Katz as the CEO of Sega of America.
Oh.
And this is, again, one of those lunch meetings they talk about where he invited him to lunch, he talked him up, and he was like hired by the time lunch was over. I love those lunch meetings.
Me too.
And it's
You get to eat food during them.
That is the main reason why.
Yeah.
I could give or take the job promotion,
Yeah.
but if someone's buying me lunch, you just feel good.
Yeah.
When someone buys you lunch, you just feel good.
Yep.
Also, it's important to note that while after a year of intense marketing done by Michael Katz, this is the whole Sega does what Nintendo don't, people really dismiss what Michael Katz did, but a lot of the stuff that Michael Katz did work in the long run, which we're going to see later.
Yeah, that's kind of the precursor. Like that sort of like lights the fuse for the console wars.
I feel like he was kind of let go prematurely. Like that's what I think the book takes out of it, and that's kind of the reaction I took out of it, is he was let go a year in. He didn't really have a lot of time to set himself, and I'm sure now I don't think he would have done exactly what Tom Kalinske is about to do, but I feel like Michael Katz is our dude. He's worked so many places. He knows what he's doing. So he would have gotten the job done somehow. But anyway, I don't want to dog on Michael Katz. You're great, Michael Katz. Never change. Okay. People who work with Kalinske says that he took a lot of guff, I said. I don't use the word guff that much. For being, they called him the Ken doll, is what people called him, because he was this good-looking businessman that was the face of Sega at the time.
And he came from Barbie.
And he came from Barbie. Yeah, he came from Mattel. So that's the obvious.
That's a very clever.
Yeah. It's just a way to make fun of your boss, I guess. But the truth is, he actually worked really, really hard. And he did not know anything about the video game industry going in, but he learned a lot very quickly. And he actually kept around him this, I don't know, what do I say, an Illuminati of people? I don't know, his own
His entourage.
entourage. There you go. Not an Illuminati. That's a whole different. That's an entourage though too, kind of.
Kind of.
But not really.
Secret.
There is no hit HBO television show called Illuminati yet.
He carried around his own deep state.
Yeah, he did. He had a group of close advisors, I guess is a better way to put it. They were all savvy industry people. The people included Paul Rue, and he was a part of the team that worked on Intellivision initially. Al Nielsen was JCPenney's merchandise buyer during the Atari boom, so he dealt with all the video game products that JCPenney bought. Steve Race was a former Atari employee and one of the founders of World of Wonder.
We talked about him.
We talked about that a little bit, yeah. And Bob Harris, who helped launch both the Master System and the Genesis for Sega. So that dude knows Sega systems. And he kept these people very close to him, and they advised him on decisions that he needed to make. Now, Kalinsky's marketing plan to face Nintendo was of 4 parts. You ready for the 4 parts?
Four-pronged attack.
A 4-pronged attack against Nintendo. The first, drop the Genesis in price from $189 to $149, with the eventual price plan of being $100.
Okay.
And
because it was more expensive than the NES.
Yeah,
right?
it was more expensive than the NES at this time, and they did not know about the SNES yet. But the whole reason for doing this is they wanted to get the Genesis into as many people's homes as possible. They wanted everyone to have a Genesis, and they figure if it's cheaper, let's do it.
You don't make money on a console, you make money on a game.
That's right, and that's exactly his whole thing.
Sega Genesis had games.
He is a full-on believer in the give away the razors, sell the blades mentality, which we'd come back to in a bit. But he replaces the initial launch title Altered Beast, which we talked about before, as a coin-op arcade port, and he replaces it with a kid-friendly game that's under development at the time called Sonic the Hedgehog.
That's weird. Never.
Wonder how
heard of
that'll
that
go. He then decides to assemble a U.S.-based team that designs games solely for American audiences. Because at this time, they were all Japanese games that were ported over. And he's like, no, we're going to make games for Americans. Just try to market it more to the American market. And then finally, the last thing he wants to do is keep up that tough marketing campaign. So he is taking from Michael Katz. He's doing the thing. He's doing some more Nintendon'ts. He's throwing out some
Genesis
more stuff.
does what Nintendo don't.
Exactly.
Nintendo is what Genesis isn't.
That's right. That's exactly what it is.
Isn't that what they?
That was their thing. I was about to say that.
Oh wow! I didn't even know you were gonna.
Dang, dude! I thought you were reading ahead, but really, you just know.
I actually knew that.
That is what that's how Nintendo fired back. Is they fired back with Nintendo is what Genesis isn't.
How did they not think that was coming?
Oh, I know. I mean, you got to just put out the fun puns and wordplay.
Yeah,
you got to do that. So while skeptical of this four-pronged attack, because basically what happened is after he decided to lay out this plan, Kalinske then went to Japan and met with Sega. Like the Sega's parent company, not Sega of America, but Sega itself.
They were surely all for this.
No, they were very much like, why would we lose all our profit margins on our consoles? Why would you drop the price of this? What are you thinking? And then he explained to them, sell the razors. I mean, sell the blades, give away the razors for free, the handles, if you want to get really specific about it, Dollar Shave Club, all that stuff. They're not a sponsor. Anyway, he explained to them that this was the way for the American market to make money. And they really took the whole thing as, well, this isn't Japan, this is America. We don't know anything about it. We got to trust our CEO of Sega of America. And
that's why you hired him.
Yeah, and Hayao Nakayama was like, yeah, so this sounds like crazy to me, but I want you to run with it because if this is what you believe we need to win, then let's do it. And they did. They let him do all four pieces of that four-pronged attack. So the plan was to create a new pilot game to release with the consoles, and that was Sega's big hit, Sonic the Hedgehog.
Oh, they hit it big with that one.
Yeah, and if you don't know about Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic was created by Yuji Naka, creator of previous hits as Phantasy Star and Ghouls and Ghosts. And Ghouls and Ghosts was a really good arcade port. And Phantasy Star was considered probably one of the best games for the Master System. That's what the book was. I remember Phantasy Star Online.
Yeah. That's a good game.
As a sequel to it. I never played the original Phantasy Star. But
yeah, there's a bunch of them. There's 4 of them on the Master System.
There's a lot of them. But Naka was pretty known around Sega for being a relentless micromanager. He was in every single piece of a game's development. Even they said that he would just jump in and start doing coding or start working on music or start working.
Swoop and poop?
Oh, he swooped and pooped. He swooped and he pooped. But he was tasked with designing a mascot character game for Sega because Nakayama was like, you know what? Nintendo has got Mario. We need our own Mario. And so originally they chose the hedgehog due to a sketch drawn by Masato Oshima that he drew this hedgehog with an attitude. And he's like, that's going to be our mascot character. But to design the game, they entrusted Yuji Naka with it. So they're like, you're going to make this game for us. And Naka wanted to make it like Mario, but simpler. So Sonic only has one button. There is no run and jump like in Mario. There's one because Sonic just runs faster the longer he runs. And Naka really took that drawing to heart and said, we're going to make Mario with attitude, which is why Sonic taps his foot. Did you ever do that? When
he kind of shakes his finger.
Yeah, he just shakes his finger like, are you going to start playing yet? And he gets bored and looks at you like, what are you doing? And so that actually wasn't the first game to do that, though. The first game to look at the character and break the fourth wall and be tap his foot and wait was Major Havoc for the Atari Graphics coin-op games. It was actually an arcade game that did that. That was pretty cool. So the key to Sonic was it was fast and it was really pretty to look at. You could look these rings, the backgrounds are really lush and colorful, and the 2D side scroller nature had loops and it had bumpers from pinball that you just bounce off of and stuff. So it was really challenging and it was really funny. I think it was kind of the perfect mix of kids could play this game, but adults could get really into it too and learn to go really fast in the stages and bounce all around. That's what I always.
You were really rewarded for knowing the stage well enough to time your jumps so that you didn't lose momentum, because losing momentum feels bad in that game.
Oh, it feels super bad. It's it was the early parkour.
Yeah,
you want to get the perfect parkour. So anyway, Sonic the Hedgehog was released in 1991 and was sold both separately and at Kalinske's request with Sega Genesis consoles. But here's the really cool part about it. If you bought a Sega Genesis with the game Altered Beast, if you just sent the packaging, not the game, the box, to Sega, they would mail you a free copy of Sonic the Hedgehog.
Oh, wow. So people couldn't get mad about like, oh man, I bought my Sega and everybody getting this free game.
They were like full on in, like, you know what? You've been loyal to us. Here you go. Here's a gift for you. Here, just send us the box and we'll send you this brand new game. Wow. So you keep Altered Beast and you get Sega Genesis's Sonic.
And they're the first company to have a really great recycling program for their packaging. That's not true.
Yeah, no one does. Everyone throws plastic away. All right. Now, on the other side of the war, it's time to talk about Nintendo and the Super Famicom.
All right.
So the Super Famicom was released in Japan on November 21st, 1990. Almost 1.5 million people pre-ordered the console in Japan.
I would have been one of those.
He would have been. I know
if
you.
I'd had the ability to pre-order consoles.
If you were not what, like 1 year old?
Yeah.
There was such a frenzy to get one, mostly because the release was troubled when there was a rumor that floated around that Nintendo only shipped 300,000 consoles, not all 1.5 million. And the city of Tokyo was slowed down during that whole week to the point that the Japanese government asked Nintendo and other video game companies to only release future hardware on weekends.
There's like everybody's playing video games. You need to get work done.
Yeah, like you can't mess up the work week. What is wrong with you? So, as far as specs go, the Super Famicom was better than both the Genesis and the TurboGrafx. The Super Famicom had a 16-bit processor, just like the Genesis, but not a hybrid like TurboGrafx, which was like in between 8 and 16. Nintendo's R&D team 2, led by Masayuki Amura, designed the console around visual and audio performance rather than just processing speed. And this was great, but also it wasn't technically the most powerful. Sega Genesis had a stronger processor still.
Oh, they would harp on that pretty hard later.
But the NES had crazy graphics and sound. Like Genesis had a 512 color palette. The SNES could display 32,000 colors.
Whoa.
And it had two customized graphic chips named PPU-1 and PPU-2, which stood for Picture Processing Unit. And it had 7 special modes for graphics, with Mode 7 graphics being the best. So 1's the worst, 7 the best. And Mode 7 pretty much meant the backgrounds were scaling or they were moving. Like, it could do more motion on the screen at once.
Any of that sort of 3D looking stuff, like all of Mario Kart or F-Zero, like the reason it looks sort of 3D is because of Mode 7.
Mode 7. Yeah, it's pretty nuts. And the Sony stereo chip too was also in there too for sound. So the sound quality was just way better than the Genesis. Yeah. But again, processing speed wasn't really there. The strongest selling point though for the SNES was the game that was included with the console. Possibly my favorite game of all time. I think I'm going to say it.
Wow.
It's my Super Mario World.
Oh.
The original Super Mario World. Just the secrets.
Yeah.
The fun. Like there was so I lived in a duplex in Alaska. Tangent time. You ready for tangent time?
Let's do it.
Let's all buckle in, okay? And I lived in a duplex in Alaska when I was like 5 in Fairbanks, and the people next door to us in the duplex, they had an SNES they bought for their grandkids that never visited. So my brother and I would just go to these old people's house and play their SNES all the time. And this game blew my mind. My child brain was just blown away. And then the Star Road. Mm-hmm. I'm not even looking at the notes anymore. I'm just talking to you about it because it makes me so excited.
Yeah.
So
Super Mario World is also my earliest gaming memory.
Oh,
it's my very first.
And that is mine.
Yeah.
Because the Super Mario World, that SNES at those people's house, I was 4 because I wasn't in kindergarten yet.
Yeah, same. I must have been 3 or 4. It was at like the daycare that I went to. Like they had a Super Nintendo. And
That's so rad that a daycare would have a Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
It's pretty good daycare. But anyway, okay, so Shigeru, not Miyamoto, was already a star at Nintendo at this point. He had worked on Donkey Kong and other games. And those games typically took like teams of 4 or 5 to make. 2 people coding, 1 person on sound, all that stuff. It took him and a team of 15 people to create Super Mario World. Mostly because it was so big. Like it really showed the whole Mario universe is just this sprawling map with all these secrets. And it also, of course, introduced everyone to everyone's favorite dinosaur, Yoshi. Mm-hmm. And some magazines were already touting this game as the greatest game ever made, which at the time, I don't know if they were wrong. You could argue that.
Not that far-fetched.
Not that far-fetched at all. Nintendo started its $25 million marketing campaign to release the SNES in the U.S. at a retail price of $199, and they would release the console with Super Mario World on September 1st, 1991. This would later be changed to September 9th for some reason. The book didn't say why, but this is the thing we talked about earlier with PlayStation. The original PlayStation 1 came out on this exact same date.
Oh, September 9th?
September 9th, 1991. I had no idea the PlayStation 1 was that old.
What? I'm not sure. I think it was like 94.
Was it the date? Was it the date
Yeah.
and not the year? Did I get confused?
Yeah.
You Google it. I'll keep talking. Okay. But the PlayStation came out maybe on the same month and day, but not the year.
I think it was
1920. Okay.
December 3rd, 1984.
Did I just find an error in this book?
Maybe.
'Cause
This is probably maybe Japan. I don't know.
This fact got me so excited, and I was like, "Whoa, am I really that dated?" We just correction and apologied ourselves. I'm fine with it. I'm sorry, everyone, for leading you astray. But yeah, okay. Ignore me, but not just that part, not the rest of it. Okay.
Yeah, it was September 9th in North America in 95.
September 9th in 1985. Okay.
Yes, so 4 years later.
So, okay, never mind. The book was correct. I read it wrong. Separate years, but it's fine. So that's still a weird date to always release a console on.
Yeah, and they've actually...
Dreamcast said it came out on that same day and month, too. It was Dreamcast and PlayStation.
Yeah, and the PlayStation 3 also came out on that day.
Whoa, so people just knew September 9th was the console day for a
The
while.
PlayStation 3 Slim model, came out on that day.
Well, I'm not going to fat shame the other PlayStation.
Yep.
I'm fine with it. So, the two problems arose at launch for the SNES. One, Sega was on fire at this time. They were crushing it. This is right when they dropped the price of the Sega Genesis to $149. And it's also right when Sonic the Hedgehog was released.
Ooh.
Right after. So that was a problem for Nintendo with their release. Another problem, and this was really weird to me, in an episode of the show Roseanne, the sitcom Roseanne, included the couple, the mom and dad, trying to buy a way too expensive, they claimed, Super Nintendo for their son. And they ended up not being able to buy the SNES as like a comment about parents and blue collar.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying. Okay.
Can't afford to get all the nice things that kids want.
Yeah, exactly. And the boy in the show says something along the lines of, "I'll just go to my friend who has a Sega Genesis' house."
Oh.
So it's like indirectly the show Roseanne was advertising for Sega, but I think they just wrote that in as like a thing, but really it wasn't. Yeah, so that was bad.
Yeah.
A lot of bad press for them. So for the first time ever, Nintendo was competing with an established product because originally the NES blew people out of the water out of nowhere. No one else was competing with them at this time. So this is pretty crazy. This is the first time they're going up against somebody. And it didn't help that Sega Genesis at the time of release had 150 different games.
It was $50 cheaper.
It had $50 cheaper and had Sonic the Hedgehog. So those are really slowing them down.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, meanwhile, we got to talk about Turbo Graphics. They're not doing too well. Okay, that company, NEC. They tried to release another handheld that played Turbo Graphics games called the Turbo Express. At the lowest price ever, the Turbo Graphics was selling at the time at $99. They were just trying to sell them at all.
Just trying to get rid of them.
Yeah, they dropped the prices of all their high-end hardware, too, which, if you remember, was what they were trying to make themselves stand out with. They were trying to make themselves stand out with
premium.
the Turbo Graphics CD, which ended up going from $400 to $300. $399 to $299. That seems like
It's a big drop.
it's a big drop, but also $300 for a CD player just blows my mind. But at the time,
I wonder how much, like, if I wanted to buy a music playing CD player in 1991, I wonder how much that costs, if that's roughly...
not like, oh, this isn't Walkman area. You're talking about just straight up boombox kind of thing.
Yeah.
I wonder. Yeah, I have no idea. Because I think I got my Walkman when I was like 96, 97 probably.
Yeah.
I love that thing though.
Oh, yeah.
I still have it. And I had the thing where you're supposed to be able to run with it. Never did. And it had that little button you'd push back and forth like an analog stick to skip the tracks. Felt good. Made you feel like you were in the future. Okay. So now I'm going to sum up the pre-war year of 1991 because this is really before things started popping off.
Gearing up.
So Nintendo sold their entire first shipment of 1 million SNESs to the United States when they went on sale in September 9th, 1991. So they got rid of their entire first shipment of inventory, sold everything. The next 3 months' numbers are contested. Sega believes, and I don't know how Sega found out the numbers on the SNES sales, but I imagine they have to research their competition, that the SNES only sold 1 million units in 3 months after launch. Nintendo has a sales figure saying they sold 2.2 million units. Meanwhile, according to the NPD Group, which is a sales figure tracking company, they say that Sega had 55% of the market in 1991 while Nintendo had 45%. So already very close.
Of consoles sold that year, or of consoles?
I think the video game market in general, like the home console market, including games, including consoles. Like they controlled 55% of all sales. And then,
okay. So is the NES factored into Nintendo's 45% then?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So SNES, if we want to get technical with it, I think what the NPD people are saying is that the SNES lost 1991.
Yeah.
Even though it came out in September, though, so Sega had 8 more months.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense.
But it's important to note also during this time, in 1991, the U.S. economy was in a recession. And the common thought with really any new product, but especially like video game consoles in general, is that people don't buy new systems or new computers in a recession.
Mm-hmm.
They buy games or software for those computers.
Okay. Makes
Instead.
sense.
So Sega probably had an upper hand.
Yeah,
during
because
that
people
time.
already had their
They already had their
Genesis.
Genesis, and they got it for way cheap, and it came with Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yep. And if it didn't come with Sonic the Hedgehog, they would give it to you for free.
Yeah, and Roseanne said you didn't need a Super Nintendo, so it was bad. Okay, now this is that's the lead up to the pre-war. So next week the next week's title chapter is called The War. So we're jumping into it.
That's my favorite Angels and Airwaves song.
The War?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
It's a great song.
Yeah, I like it. I haven't listened to Angels and Airwaves in forever.
Me neither, but that's a great
We
song.
might have to do it right after this. Okay, so now before we go to war, we're going to have a weird tangent. This is the end of this book, and I'm only saying this, and I'm going to do it really fast because I know there's some people out there that probably don't care about this. But I'm from Seattle, and Seattle has a team called the Seattle Mariners. They're
Big
a
fan.
baseball team. I love them. I've been a big fan of them ever since I was in 7th grade when I moved away from Alaska. Tangent time. We're in it again. Okay. Nintendo got in some hot water in 1991 because the recession in 1991 was blamed entirely on Japan. The U.S. blamed Japan for some reason. And it was at this point that Nintendo was offered to buy the Seattle Mariners Major League Baseball team. And it was introduced to them by a U.S. Senator named Slade Gorton, who was a Republican from Washington. He invited them to the party. He's like, hey, did you guys know the Seattle Mariners are on sale? Do you want to buy them? And he kind of threw this idea out at Minoru Arakawa and Howard Lincoln. Okay, and then in turn told Hiroshi Yamauchi, and he was the president of the Nintendo Limited, the entire company. So not just Nintendo of America, but everything Nintendo did. And you know what? What ended up happening is Hiroshi Yamauchi decided to buy the team. He was just like, I'm going to buy the team. I don't care what
him
they say.
or like him on behalf of Nintendo, or him himself.
I think him on behalf of Nintendo, because he thought of it as a marketing opportunity. But he did front, so he bought it with investors. So it wasn't just him. It was John Ellis, the chairman of Puget Sound and Power and Light. He was the chairman of that company. John McCaw of McCaw Cellular and Communications, Frank Schrantz, the CEO of Boeing at the time, and Chris Larson of Microsoft.
Wow.
And they bought the team for $100 million. But Yamauchi personally contributed 60% to it.
Okay.
So Yamauchi had the controlling stake in the baseball team. But this was some negative press for Nintendo in 1991 because Americans already thought Japan was taking over America and blamed them for it. And now a Japanese company is buying an all-American Major League Baseball team.
Oh.
Like, oh no, things are getting crazy. But it wasn't just bad for Americans. People in Japan actually got mad at Hiroshi Yamauchi for flashing his wealth. They called him arrogant. They said, because at this time, America's in a recession, but Japan is doing very well. They are like, it's an era of prosperity.
They're crushing it.
Yeah, they're doing really, really well. In fact, people claimed that, and this is a quote from the book, that they were bringing Yamauchi, by buying the Major League Baseball team, the Seattle Mariners, was bringing negative attention to the current prosperity of Japan. The weirdest thing about this whole thing is Yamauchi bought the team, never goes to games, never went. And in fact, I believe Nintendo actually sold their stake in the Major League Baseball team, Seattle Mariners, last year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they don't own them anymore. I remember when I lived there, this is 2 years ago, you could go to games and you could bring your Nintendo 3DS or whatever, and you could like street pass with people and talk. And then Pokemon Go also had a ton of stops in the stadium. And now it's like not Nintendo at all. There's no Nintendo affiliation whatsoever. So this I feel like this was definitely thrown in at the end of the chapter. It felt very thrown in, but it does kind of show maybe this might have affected Nintendo's sales really in 1991 because this deal happened in 1991.
Yeah, it's a recession. People aren't buying systems. They especially don't want to be buying systems from a Japanese company.
Yeah, they're already feeling weird, which is funny because we all know Sega is also a Japanese company.
But they already had their Segas, so they're not going to get rid of it.
So, but this was definitely something that I thought was an interesting note to put on the end of it, and kind of to say pre-war wise, another thing that Nintendo did that might have been a no-no, So, in fact, in the book, Howard Lincoln and Minoru Arakawa are vacationing for Christmas together in a Nintendo-owned resort in Hawaii, apparently at the time, when they find out the deal happens, and they're like, oh no, I hope this doesn't affect anything, and it did. So yeah, that's what we're leading. That was the final pre-war chapter. I feel like last episode kind of led up to it too, but this one really we've hit 1992. We're there. Yeah. So that's where we're going to start next week.
And this battle is some of the fiercest marketing battle of any marketing battle, really. It's pretty. They go for the throat.
Marketing of all marketing.
The marketing of all marketing. It's like early 90s edginess meets this super competitive. It's going to be great.
It's going to be good stuff.
I love it.
I'm excited to get there. Well, hey, Tyler, what have you been playing?
I have been playing World of Warcraft. Pretty much exclusively. I'm a level 120. I still have one more zone to finish in the main story stuff so that I can do all the fun stuff. Because I'm not a huge fan of the questing experience in World of Warcraft, but I have faith that the stuff is on the other side is good, that it's worth me putting 30 hours into getting to level 120. I'm excited. I haven't played any Destiny in about a week because waiting for Forsaken, and there's a big old patch that just dropped, so I may have to check that out.
That's what I played very small amount of time of this week because I'm moving. So right before I packed up my computer, I jumped on Tuesday. Big update, downloaded it, played it a little
35
bit.
gigs.
Yeah, big update. But it's fun. They're leading up to Forsaken. It is a hype machine. It's definitely just doing the hype thing. Yep. You can move your guns to different spots. It's cool. I had another thing I wanted to talk to you about, and we don't really go into gaming news that often. This is not a part of what you've been playing segment, but I listened to this on another podcast, but it's news. It's out there in the internet, but this is where I heard it.
Some people are going through our archives in 10 years. They're just going to skip this part.
Yeah, but Xbox announces that they're going to treat Xbox One and Xbox One S like a cell phone. Did you see this?
Oh, yeah.
They're selling monthly plans for them.
Yeah.
You'd rent to own essentially an Xbox One S or Xbox One X included with Game Pass and Xbox Live.
You actually end up, I think I read, you end up paying less overall.
Yeah, it's 2 years.
Over 2 years. It's not even just pay a monthly fee and after a couple of years you've only paid that monthly fee, but you have technically paid more for the things you got. It's not true. You actually end up saving you save $20 on the Xbox One X and $50 on a One S. It's actually there's no downside to taking this negative interest loan basically.
Yeah, there's no interest on it either.
Yeah.
It's just straight up like a phone would be. You're just paying it off, and then when it's done, it's yours.
Yeah, and you save money. It's the appropriate way to buy it now.
When I heard about this, I was very skeptical. I was like, I don't know, but then I'm realizing more and more. Yeah, I think I would rather pay $24 a month and get everything for 2 years, and then when it's done, I own it.
Yeah,
than play $500 up front.
Yeah, and I bet they'll also offer when new hardware is available, they'll probably do a thing. It's in 2 years you can keep it, or you can give it back to us and we'll give you the new thing and you just keep paying that monthly fee. And you're like, well, I'm already paying it. I can obviously afford it. Why not?
Yeah. I thought what was brought up on that, I guess I should say what podcast it was. I don't want to make it seem like I'm stealing ideas or anything, but they brought this up on the Unlocked podcast on IGN that I was listening to today. And they brought up a good point too for people that can't afford the console. This might be the way to go.
Yeah.
Which I think is a really good thing. And it was really smart of Microsoft to be like, okay, we're opening this up to people who wouldn't usually be able to get our products, which I think, and it also kind of resonated with me because this chapter with the whole Roseanne thing, this is totally what this is all about.
Yep.
Making people be able to play video games.
That's right. And giving away the handles to sell the blades.
Yeah. And also, there are so many games on Game Pass. You would never get bored. The Master Chief Collection. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much stuff on there. So, and then Sea of Thieves. You got all sorts of games you can play.
Quantum Break's going to be on there soon, too. I need to play that still.
I think Forza games are on there, right? Pretty much anything that's owned by Xbox, released by Xbox is on
Pretty much, yeah. I think they're getting...
Microsoft Studios, I mean.
They're getting pretty liberal with that because their plan is hey, we want to have them on Game Pass on day one.
Yeah.
They're
if
just
the
trying
next
to.
Halo came out on Game Pass, I would get Game Pass.
It is.
It is?
Yeah, they said it would.
Oh, that's perfect. I would totally do that.
That's like their whole deal now. It's like everything we put out is Game Pass.
I love it.
Yeah, me too. Big fan.
I think the consensus is we're fine with this.
Yeah, I'm cool with it.
I'm cool
and
with
you
it.
get Xbox Live too, which is
that'd be a good thing to bring up because I mean I've been having kind of slow week, but I've been following gaming news still. So anyway, well, that's a podcast for today.
That's what we got.
As always, you can tweet at Tyler at SneakerElf, ELPH.
That's right.
You can tweet at me at MeColetta. You can email us at codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. You can rate, review, and subscribe to us on iTunes. It would mean the world to us.
Mm-hmm.
You can wish me luck while I'm moving.
Yep. Good luck.
Thank you. It's going to
be a long drive.
A real adventure.
Yeah.
And with that, I think that's it for the day. You want to say anything to the listener? Just say bye-bye or something?
That's it. Bye-bye or something.
This has been a Potaholics Comedy Network presentation. Potaholics.com